So yes, the journey initially started by trying to establish representation for Māori on our what's called subcommittees on a council, and any decision like that you make, you can't do in isolation as the mayor. It has to go through the full council. It's the democracy that we have, and so iwi, or the hapu leaders, were asking for seats on our subcommittees because previous to that they just had representation on their own little sort of komiti Māori. It was a set little committee to the side that no real councillors turned up to debate or listen to the Māori point of view. And so legislation requires councils to include Māori in decision making. So the first step I took was this ability to have Māori on our subcommittees, which is another layer higher, closer to the table. That's when it started. It was like a real sort of, firstly, a reflection of my own upbringing in terms of privileged Pākehā, biased racist view of Māoridom. But the community reacted in a way that just shook me to the core, and not just in Taranaki, but from throughout New Zealand. So yes, it began a journey that continues to this day. Yeah, so basically what kicked that off was Te Atiawa were going through settlement with the Crown, and where the council has a part to play in that, and particularly around the Waitara leases. Very complicated, historic lands grab, theft of Māori land, 780 odd properties put into perpetual leases. So you had leaseholders who had been there for a long time who wanted to freehold. The iwi itself was divided between hapu around the process that was being undertaken. I became an observer of this process. I was shocked to the core around my naivety and ignorance of my belief of I thought fair go, mate, was at play here when we were doing settlements, just to discover the weight of the Crown on basically people who had day jobs, didn't have the same resources as the Crown, the pressure from the Crown for iwi to settle, the human cost in the physical faces and the body language I was observing of Māoridom under this immense pressure, a sense of pushing and a rush from the Crown I found very strange, and a lack of sincerity in the heart from the Crown. It was really just about money. Started me thinking how dumb I was, how ignorant I was, but really how we weren't doing this as a country correctly. And I came to realise that settlement actually is more than money. Money in so many ways cannot buy what's broken, because what I was observing from my own government was highlighting how broken we are as Pākehā, and the way we weren't truly taking ownership of what was done, what was taken, and the consequences. But from that, yes, I was, of course, getting to meet iwi leaders for the first time in my life in the sense of in that environment, because prior to that I'd never engaged at all in the Māori world. And through conversations, it was a lovely question that was put to me, and it was simply, look, Mr. Mayor, we are transitioning here from grievance to participation, and part of that is to be active and involved in our community, and we'd love to work with the council round the table so that we can grow the community together. I thought, what a great aspiration. I mean, that's fantastic. So of course naturally say, well, how can we achieve that? What would be real for you in that sense? And they say, well, look, we know you can have Māori seats. We know that it would be destructive and divisive. But the level that you've got us at the moment, with all due respect, is low-hanging fruit. We're parked right beside a youth committee and a accessibility, all these other little low-level communities, committees, which is fine, has a place. But it's not the level that we want to engage to grow together. You know, we're about to get a lot of asset back, a lot of money we want to strategise and plan, and for environment, for tourism, for all of us. I thought, well, yeah, that's a good, what a fair point. And then they said, we also realise, of course, there is a statutory obligation on you as a council to include tangata whenua in the decision making of council as treaty partners in a sense. So, well, great. It's what's workable for you then. And it was put, look, there's another layer. It's called your subcommittees. It's where more councillors come to. It's closer to the table. In fact, the way he put it was, we'd like to come from the car park into the reception. We know we're not going to be at the dining room yet, but at least if we're in the reception, we're closer. I thought, yeah, that's what a great thing to do. That's a great start. And as I said, so no mayor can just make these things happen. You only have one vote. It's fine. I prepared the documents. We had a workshop with my councillors, and took the option of representation on our 3 standing committees. There would have been 2 from each hapu. They would have their own internal election cycle, so that's all democratic, and away we would go. But I lost that. My council declined it. You can't have race-based representation. You can't have unelected people on the council. Well, yes, you can. A council can establish, for example, a risk and audit committee. You can appoint an outside accountant to run that for you, to make sure that the finances are being secured, looked at correctly. And people would say that that's great leadership. They'd say that's fantastic governance. Good on you. You're putting in place the skill set that you don't particularly think you have as an elected governance group. Well done. Well, we should do the same for Māori, because it's the same requirements, same outcomes are desired. But no, that got rejected and lost. And so, what was next? 2 weeks after that day, the officers of council came to me and said, you probably don't want to know this, but you're also in the cycle of the 6-yearly representation review. Well, what's that? Well, every 6 years, all councils in New Zealand are required by law to reflect the representation around the table, council table. You think, well, what does that mean? Why would you do that? Surely it's the best person gets voted for. Which is true, of course the best person gets voted for. This is to ensure that those around the table are a fair reflection of a community. Why? You wouldn't want all your councillors, for example, living on the same street. You have rural communities, you have wealthy communities, you have, there's a range of different aspects within a community. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Because even in our parliament, we have representative democracy in that we have electorate seats. Parliament is known as the House of Representatives. We vote for those who we feel best represent us. You wouldn't want to vote at large for New Zealand, for example, coming from New Plymouth. I wouldn't want all of the representatives living in Auckland, for example, because it's not a fair reflection of our views, our challenges, our community. Our council can do the same. You can have wards. And common wards are rural and urban, city. Because we acknowledge the rural community has different aspirations, different challenges, a different culture to someone living in the CBD in an uprise apartment. And why wouldn't you want to be around the table for those reasons? Because the decisions you make affect us all. So you want to ensure that you're having robust, good, inclusive debate. Yes, the best person from that ward is voted for. That's democracy. That doesn't change. One of the decisions you can do in this review period is establish a seat for Māori, tangata whenua, just as we have seats for Māori in our parliament. It's exactly the same principle, in that those who would be on the Māori ward on a council are voted from the Māori electoral roll. Makes sense, nothing wrong with that. Good, fair representation. Not only are you legally required to include Māori, the government has put this as an option to fulfil that representative question, and aligns with the treaty of principles of the treaty around inclusion and partnership for the Indigenous people. So I had 2 weeks to decide, do I take this decision to the council? Because previous councils and most councils in New Zealand leapfrog that Māori ward seat and just go for general seat discussion. Because if you don't install the Māori ward or debate the Māori ward seat first, there's a timeline lapse and it runs out. You can't go back to that decision for another 6 years. Knowing the grief and the pushback that I'd received just wanting to have Māori representation on our subcommittees, what was I to do? Well, clearly I took it to the council. And some of the councillors that hadn't been at the first debate around Māori representation on subcommittees were in attendance at this meeting, and some councillors didn't attend the second meeting, if that makes sense. Or in other words, we got it across the line by one vote. That then triggered a change in my life. I've never been the same. My journey has been completely turned upside down. Yeah. So to answer the question, yes. Has it been challenging in terms of pushback and race relations? Absolutely. Unbelievable. Having saying that started within myself. Because all of what I was receiving and hearing and getting thrown at me, I saw myself in. I identified with that anger, that fear, that ignorance, that bias, that racist attitude. And I couldn't judge that. I couldn't, be all sort of high and mighty. Because that was me. I'd been like that all my life. I was racist too. Then it becomes, well, what are you going to do about it, mate? You're the mayor. Are you going to drop it? Are you going to keep pushing this? What are you going to do? Well, then came, well, who am I the mayor for? Just the majority? Just Pākehā? Who, if I was Māori and this was happening, who would I want to go to help for support? It would be my leader, would it not? The person who's been voted to represent us all. So it was a no-brainer. I had to stand on the side of right, of justice and inclusion. Because I guarantee you this, if this was the other way around and we were debating whether the rural person should have a seat or not, I'd go and stand and support that. And these are the questions I had of myself. I'd do that in a heartbeat. Why wouldn't I do that in a heartbeat for Māori then? Because Māori are also part of our country. Well, look, if I was given the ability to rewrite the whole status of representation on councils, it would be 50-50. Because the partnership, or the terms of reference from a treaty, our founding document, is around the fact that two peoples have come together from the get-go. And because I say to people, if you defended what you defend so staunchly today from the start, New Zealand would be a completely different country in terms that Māori were the majority. But as a minority Pākehā, we created systems that excluded Māori from the start. And we've also got systems that exclude Māori today. We have not changed. And that's because when you establish a Māori seat, if you decide to do that, then only that decision can be petitioned and removed by way of poll and a referendum. No other seat. You can't form a public petition to remove the rural seat, an urban seat or a general seat, only the Māori seat, by way of legislation. So in other words, put to the side whether you think Māori's wards is or isn't the best solution from a treaty-based partnership or a fair representation as two peoples. The fact that we have the legal ability to petition the rights, the human right of Māori to have a say, is horrendous. That in 2019 you can go and form it. 5% is all you need, and you empower a majority to colonise Māori. Because what you're effectively deciding is whether Māori can have a say. No one else can have that right. It doesn't come back to Pākehā. Imagine if it did. Imagine if Māori had the right to petition Pākehā around a council. It wouldn't happen, would it? It would be considered horrendous. Because it is horrendous. But as Pākehā, we see it as rightfulness and just and appropriate, thank you very much. So nothing's changed from your statement. We haven't moved anywhere. We've still created a system that suits us. And think of this. All of what's happened in New Zealand in terms of policy has been through the lens of European, Pākehā. All of it. Even Māori wards has been designed by Europeans. Because it's tokenism. Of course it is. Because you can't really have it. You can try, Mr. Mayor. If you want to do it, you can. But if you do, we better have ability to petition it away. I mean, it's horrendous, and it just shows the state of mind of Pākehā New Zealand. Today, nothing's changed. Look, I go way beyond that. From my experience, it's not a political ideological view for me. I've lived this as someone who was a mayor and a councillor for 6 years. And that is, what a cunning little system we've created here. Because at central government, yes, we've got Māori seats, albeit 7, albeit tokenistic 2. They pass legislation with Māori voices, so they can debate, a robust debate, in a more inclusive way. But they delegate to councils the real decisions, where the rubber actually hits the road. The RMA, all of the rating, environment, without any ability to actually have Māori at the table. It's actually horrendous. What a disguised way of continuing to take from Māori. So your point is exactly right. And so if there's no real proper inclusion in the decision-making table, these subcommittees that most councils have, it's just tokenistic stuff, because the Māori aren't there to debate and vote and have real influence. And that's what's lacking, is the influence of our partnership, influence of the tangata whenua, the indigenous people. And we know this to be true because look what's happening in our country, in the environment, the land use, land that can't be, it's landlocked. Councils grab it to pay offset rates. So Māori land again is subsidising everybody else. So we need a complete turnaround, upside down shaking it. It should be 50-50 around the table on councils by way of right, not wards, by way of right. Because I was raised by my country to think like that, to act like that, and have that right through to my DNA. So I connect with where they're coming from. So I can't speak for them particularly, but I can answer it in terms of myself. And so I went on a journey of realising that I've been raised to be racist by New Zealand as a Pākehā, and to signal that anything for Māori to get ahead or anything close is termed race-based privilege or giving an advantage to Māori. When in fact, if we talk in terms of race-based privilege, it's Pākehā that have race-based privilege, because everything's been designed by us, for us. We've never truly included, and so we're full of this fear, and our reaction to that is to get angry and defensive and attack the message. When in fact within that is, you've got to realise that this is Māori land. We came here. Māori didn't go seeking us. We say it out loud here. You know, I used to think, and I used to say, well, we saved you. And if I was Māori, I think, well, saved us from what? We didn't seek, you came here for you. You took it all, you brought all the gun, you guys did all this. And we did. We created the whole system. And so we're responsible for its outcomes, its problems, not only to Māori, but to all of us. So that's where race-based stuff comes from, including Māori, is treaty-based. I just can't get through to these people. It's based on a treaty, because I agree you shouldn't have race-based policies. And I know that because I've experienced the privilege of having race-based policies. As Pākehā, I've not had to endure my land being subjected and stolen and used to grow for everyone, all of the stuff that Māori have had to endure on the back of race-based privilege. That's why I know it's wrong. Including Māori around the table is treaty-based, and the land that belongs to Māori. And we've created systems to exclude the original owners. So if anyone's got a problem around that, it's Pākehā, not Māori. We're the ones that are broken. And the members of Hobson's Pledge, and there's plenty of other people like that, I understand it. Look, I get that. I challenged myself on that. For me, I realised it was ignorance and it was racist. I do hear within that environment, everything goes through cabinet, and I've been told there are members within that cabinet who don't see it this way, and I'm probably no surprises guessing of the particular makeup of government, who that may be. But I haven't directly heard that, so I can't directly comment to that, other than to say, and just on MMP as an example, the irony really, if you think about New Zealand, we decided first past the post wasn't fair, because we were having minority governments, in a sense. More people voted for other parties than the one that got through. So we realised that actually that's not good representation. We need to change our system to be more fair and inclusive. Which is true, I understand it, and great. So we have MMP, and no matter what government gets formed, whether you like that or don't like that, you'd have to argue and say that overall that's made a difference, right? Because minority parties are now at the table, which counters what I'm saying here about Māori wards. That's the whole thing. So why is this mind block when it comes to councils? Because councils don't have MMP. We still operate under first past the post. So we celebrate these things in Parliament. And we hear it. It's great. There's never been more Māori than ever. Well, yes, that's true. In that MMP has done that for Māori. So then why don't we celebrate and do something for council? Why do we have this roadblock? We say, oh, I don't know, we better have a petition. If those Maoris want to say. You look at government, oh, it's great. There's heaps of Maoris there now. So it's quite odd. Well, it's not odd. It's us, Pākehā. That's how we roll, right? So, but even some of those MPs, you know, Winston Peters' party, let's be honest here, New Zealand First once held all 7 Māori seats in an MMP government. Now we hear the same party come out against it, saying you can't have race-based seats. But you once held them. I don't get that. They were okay once. For you to get in as a minority voice, now you don't have them or want them, now you want to get rid of them. I mean, that's a mixed message to us all, and seems very self-serving. And is that our democracy? Is that who we are as New Zealand? I don't think so. We need to be much better than that, and much more inclusive than that, because we celebrate it in Parliament. So who's the block? Our politicians. So yeah, I'm chipping away every day. Not so much to say we should or shouldn't have a Māori ward seat, because I appreciate and respect that every district is going to have its own nuances. There'll be relationships that are formed. I respect that. That's what representation, and that's what reviews are all about. It's to ensure that people are included. What I'm arguing here every day is that we've given ourselves this modus operandi to subject Māori to petitioning. That act goes against all of the human rights of anybody. We would imagine having the right to petition based on your gender, your sexual orientation, your religious belief. We have got a Bill of Rights that talks about all of it. You can't do that stuff. And we'd go, that's right, it's abhorrent. You can't do that. Anyway, where's my form for those Maoris? I don't want them on the council. It's true, right? We have this big, massive mind block. So we've normalised the ill treatment of Māori to the point we don't even see what we do. That's what I'm fighting here. Our colonising ways, even in 2019. And it sits in legislation. And so from that, of course, I've discovered the Crown hasn't even included aspects of the treaty into our laws. So they can pick and choose at random what suits. This is just disastrous. It's broken. We haven't changed since It's Waitangi Day. What's changed? Nothing. It's got progressively worse and worse and worse. And so that's a down on all of us, not just Māori, as a country. So I'm calling, every day I'm calling to those leaders actually, to actually lead. Stand up. Put what you truly believe on the line. I did. Was your political career too important to you as an individual? Because I tell you this, politician, when you retire from politics, it's not going to be that you got voted in that you'll remember, or the popular policies that you passed. It's going to be what you chose to ignore to stay there that will remain with you. I just guess in terms of, we hear the rhetoric around being kind, being generous, being inclusive. So our politicians are signalling the words. And we all touch on that, we grab that like a hope. It's like we're quenching a thirst for please, care. And so you're saying these words. But I don't see the actions yet. How long would legislation, Prime Minister, stay on the books if there was this right to petition the farmer? Or if there was a right to petition Pākehā? It would be changed overnight, wouldn't it? Why do you ignore it? What you walk past is what you accept. Now, there are MPs sitting in there who, in the previous term of government, supported changing this law. Why are you ignoring this? You kick it to touch. Is it too hard? Do you not care? I mean, we're about to debate, or the Parliament this year is about to debate getting more permanency for the Māori seats in Parliament, which I agree, of course, absolutely we should. Same as councils should be as of a right. In fact, I go further, shouldn't be 7 seats. There should be an electorate seat for Māori in every area. That's what partnership and being inclusive actually means. 7, still an insult. But you're going to fight for those, you MPs, to be retained in Parliament. And I'm going to fight with you. But why aren't you fighting for the seats for council? Why are you ignoring the process that allows those seats to be petitioned and removed? Even Winston Peters at the last election, who said, I'm going to campaign on removing the Māori seats, we should have a referendum, defaulted to say, well, if there's going to be a referendum, it should actually be within Māoridom. So why doesn't even that aspect apply to a council? Referendum should be done by the people that are affected by it, not by a majority who get to colonise a minority, because the rights of that minority will be determined by the majority. In this case, that's a voice at the table. That's horrendous. Come on, New Zealand, what is wrong with us? You don't have to agree or like me on my political view, but in terms of this, that is segregation. And we just had the years acknowledging women's suffragette. Where were all they? That was about equality. That was about rights, not being excluded. We've normalised the way we treat Māori to the point of ignorance. We just don't see it. We've got this massive blind spot. We have the cheek to stand on the world stage and pretend to be some utopian race-inclusive country. What did you do when you got back after saying that? Did you sign your form to keep Māoris out of the council? I mean, we're such hypocrites. And I say to this, how do you think it must feel to be Māori? Because I hear, where's your empathy, right? People say, oh, they don't vote. You know, if they voted, or if they came forward, they'd be there. I'm like, really? How do you think you'd feel if your community just had a vote to exclude you, based on who you are culturally? Would you feel that you belong? Would you think that council represents you? Do you want to be part of that? I wouldn't. I'd run a mile. So what do you think is going to happen when you do things like that? It's not an inclusive country. It's a racist country. Hobson's Pledge people. They're the ones, and I hate to say it, it's that silent majority. Us Pākehā. We're still colonising Māori. And I'm appalled. So yeah, I'll chip away every day. I'll never stop. It's not to enforce a Māori wood seat. It's to highlight our racist ways towards Māori.